Hi, this is the weekly VOLTHA TST meeting. It is, let's see, June 27th. And it looks like we've got some announcements in the agenda this morning. Is Michelle on? Looks like you're first up.
Yeah, I'm here. I had sent out an email earlier to the mailing list, but just wanted to be available if anyone had any questions about the TST election. So we received 3 nominations for the 3 open positions. So we don't actually need to conduct an election. We can just announce that the positions have been filled.
Okay, good. Let's see. Okay, so next up is Sirkant, if he's on. For the BBF discussion continuation from one of the earlier meetings. Let's see, I don't know if he's on. I don't see him. Okay, so we can keep going. I'll put that on the agenda for next week. So next up is Timon, Amit, and Mahir. I think Mahir might still be on vacation. We're looking to schedule an in-person broadband meeting in September or October. If either Amit or Timon would like to take this one.
Sure. This is Timon. Hi. So let's see. So I guess most of you know that we've had a roughly annual meeting of the broadband and VOLTHA community. And we had one last year as well in the spring. And we're thinking about, we want to arrange one for 2023 as well. And we're targeting September, October. And we are looking for venues both in Berlin and in Istanbul. But the big, question is, well, one of many questions, I suppose, but is, how technical to make it. I think last year's became a little bit more business focused. It was post-pandemic. It was kind of an update from the community, kind of what different companies were doing in the space more. But I think it might be really valuable for this community to or for this meeting as well, to really cater to the developers in the community and provide an opportunity for the developers to come together as well. And I'm curious about feedback on that. I guess there are 2 parts of that. One is the appetite to submit proposals for talks. And, and I'm imagining talks that are just sort of about, future features or where the project should go, that kind of thing. And then the other piece of it is, how easy is it for the technical community to travel to, let's say it's in Berlin, to gather in person? Are companies facing travel restrictions right now? Are those starting to loosen up a little bit, or where things are at? So that's what's on my mind. And I've talked about it with the TST leads a little bit. Amit, I don't know if you want to say anything, but just to paraphrase quickly is, I think there's some appetite, in our discussions about making this meeting more technical. But Amit, you want to add anything?
No, I think you have summed it up correctly.
Okay, so I really just wanted to share that perspective. I'd love some feedback if there's anybody that has an opinion, an opinion on it as well, or some thoughts. Anybody? So I suppose what we're leaning towards is opening a CFP, but not a call for papers. It's not that kind of thing where you need to kind of write something up. Really kind of imagining presentations and just updates, but really trying to foster more kind of interactive collaboration and brainstorming and I guess evangelizing for the project and things like that as well. If there isn't any direct feedback, I think we'll continue to head in this direction. We'll open the CFP, but please, think about it, and think about things you might want to come and speak about, and we'll be back with more updates shortly. Okay.
Okay, good. Let's see. Okay, so we have another announcement. We have some folks from the BISDN joining us. They're joining ONF and will be helping out the community in the project. Jan and Roger will be joining us. Jan unfortunately couldn't make it the meeting today, but I believe Roger's online. If you'd
I'm
like
here.
to,
Hi,
if you'd
everyone.
Hi. If you'd like to say hello, or if there's anything you'd like to talk about.
I think we're going to get to this right with the updates maybe later on in the agenda. Otherwise, I could talk briefly about what we've accomplished so far and where we might be interested in help from the community or from people here.
Well, actually, Roger, why don't you start just a little bit with kind of your understanding of your role, and then I think that would blend nicely into the VPN discussion. We can go right into that. But just there may be people here that aren't familiar with the background of why we've brought you on and what we're hoping that you guys can achieve.
Sure. So, our primary objective in the project that we signed on is to get the rack or the hardware in the rack in Berlin working again, and all the related pipelines and testing stuff that's not been working great in the recent past. And that's where we started. Some of you might have already received emails regarding to our progress so far.
Yeah, and I would just add too that both you and Jan are based in Berlin, relatively close to the Berlin lab, and that Jan has been engaged in another part of the DT lab system called the I14Y lab, which is really just adjacent to the VOLTHA lab, and has an active role there. So there's a lot of good synergy. Already had access kind of into the DT facilities and whatnot. So that's why we kind of thought this was a good approach for really revitalizing all the lab infrastructure that we have in Berlin, getting it back up and running. Okay. So maybe with that, we should go into the VPN discussion, because as many of you probably know, one of the pressing problems, a good example of why I think we needed to kind of invest more, is that the VPN to the Berlin lab has been down for at least 8 weeks, I think, and it's been problematic getting it back up and running. And so, as these guys have come on board, they've been able to spend, kind of their initial effort on looking first at the VPN issue.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So updates for the VPN. So far, there are some updates on the DT side as well. So far on the ONF side, we've traced the connection from our servers over through AWS, and this was the status from last week. There are 2 tunnels that are in AWS that are part of the VPN that were down. So Jan, Mayak, and Olaf have been debugging locally at the DT lab. An external console was connected to the gateway machine, and Jan found that the network card in the gateway was crashing. So there've been kernel and drivers updated on the machine. The network card has been moved to another device, and so far that seems to be working. There was a local DNS server in the lab that was retired, but the DHCP server was still referencing it. So that's been updated to use a public DNS server, so we can do resolution now. There's still an issue in that translation going on. For traffic being routed through the VPN, we're missing the piece that's supposed to be connecting them, and that's being researched right now. And if there's any questions, or if Roger or Mayak or Olaf would like to add anything else, feel free.
Sure, I can add a few things. So first off, we already added a lot of documentation trying to document the hardware in the rack at the DT lab. we documented everything that was available to us, cabling, including power and networking, and the names of the servers or all the other equipment that is in the rack. We ran into a problem though, because some of the devices in that rack do not have any labels. So we don't know what they are, what their name is supposed to be, or their role. So if anybody here has any idea about documentation or what these unnamed or unlabeled devices could be, then please let us know. That would be quite helpful. Then we already talked about the change network interface. There was also some work on getting the Kubernetes clusters running again. The main issue appeared to be that at least one of the clusters was running out of disk space. We removed some of the log files or truncated them to allow the pods to work again. We just restarted pods that had failed, and when some space had been reclaimed, they started to work again. There was also an issue with networking for the Kubernetes pods. They were not able to get to the internet. They needed to download images, for example. So we temporarily fixed this by adding some firewall rules on the gateway. But this rule will disappear as soon as the server gets rebooted. So there's nothing permanent yet. We still have to discuss what the intention was, how this was supposed to work. We just added a workaround to make it work for now. And this brings me actually to the next point where we would like to get some help, and that is we would like to know what the intention was for the networking. So how was it meant to work? This includes things like access from the Kubernetes cluster to the internet. It also includes the configuration of the VPN that gets talked about. We did find some bits and pieces that seem to be related to it, like IPsec tunnel endpoints, but we don't really know how all those things fit together. If there's any documentation or if anybody can write something up, that would be quite helpful. Also, now that the Kubernetes clusters seem to be working, we would like to start some pipelines to see if we can get something running. We don't seem to be able to log into Rancher though, and that seems to be the tool that people are using to deploy things there. So if anybody knows where we can get access to Rancher, or if somebody has access and can run things for us, that would be also very much appreciated.
Now, do you have the access to Rancher?
Just the login. I'm sure we could. I'm sure we can set something up for him.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, all excellent questions, of course, and I think what you're going to find is I'm not sure there are people on this call that are going to have that institutional knowledge. Most of that institutional knowledge, so you know, was held by ex-ONF employees that have kind of transitioned out. But we still have access to them, and so it might be that kind of a debrief session, a Q&A session with Andreas, I'm thinking in particular, might be really helpful. He might be able to kind of walk through with you some of the pictures of the physical equipment and recall what some of the things are, and help you out. And we'd I'd be happy and to help introduce you and kind of get that started.
That would be awesome. Thanks.
And I'm also trying to think if there are any kind of archives or anything else, but we'll continue to point you to everything that we've got. But part of this is going to be a bit of a forensic kind of piecing together some of the pieces here.
Yeah, sure. I mean, if there's no other way, we are prepared to do that. It's just it takes quite a bit more time if you have to figure out everything that way.
Understood. Understood. So, I mean, should we try to do something like right away with, or, you know, give you a little bit more time kind of digging around to kind of build up your list of questions? You know, I think that you know, there's a lot of goodwill and support, but maybe I would say kind of a limited number of hours, you know what I mean? We don't want to kind of overburden the asks to that other team. So the more we could batch it or kind of be ready to have a deeper discussion, the better.
That's understood. So I guess it very much depends on the time pressure. We were under the impression that it was important that this thing got working as soon as possible. So if that is still true, then it might be good to have such a meeting set up sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, there is urgency around getting this going. So yeah, I'll start to work on getting that set up. Okay.
Okay, we all set on that? Okay, so the next item is the release. That's ongoing in the middle of the VPN debugging. We've had not dedicated exclusively to this, but there've been Onos component deployments, and have been kicking off some triage jobs to make sure that the different repositories are building. There were a few problems that are starting to show up. Well, if you visit, yeah, well, if you visit the release matrix page, I have to log in. Some of the jobs are decorated red. Those are the ones that are going to need to be looked into. And I still need to go through, check all the versions, work on the Helm charts and the system test files to make sure everything's updated. But that's kind of where the release is at right now. Okay, so for the last agenda item, see, we had a request to put a discussion item on. So for the TSTs to discuss what BSDN projects to work on, or what projects BISDN should be working on.
So Joey, isn't the case, I mean, we kind of know the project is the lab. Is it more that, you know, what jobs should be focused, or is the way to prioritize if we're trying to bring back all of the various Jenkins regression tests? Is there some guidance that the TST could give them for where to focus first? Is that the right question, or is there a different question? And maybe what do you know, I'd ask you to you know, what are your thoughts on this? Like, you know, where to focus first?
Yeah, I think we could start with getting at least one of the hardware test pipelines, right, working. Maybe we can pick either the DT workflow pipeline or the TT workflow pipeline that works on the hardware in Berlin, right, and get that working. So at least get started with one job, right, one hardware test pipeline job. And maybe we figure out most of the problems in that, right? Because most of the problems should be common, I would think, right, across the pipelines.
Makes sense. So that's a single job, say the DT workflow or TT workflow, or is that a set of jobs?
I think it's a single job. Now we can look up on the Jenkins pipelines, but I think it's a single job.
Yeah. Well, if you could just provide pointers or even paste into here or email the guys. Yeah, I think it makes sense. I thought that would be a set of jobs.
So there are multiple jobs. What I'm talking about is just one pipeline. Maybe I'll post it on the group. Try to look it up and post it on the group. And yeah, we could start with that one, right? As in one of them. To start with. I'll look it up and then post it.
Okay.
So.
So, but back to the release, Joey. I mean, so where are we with the code freeze?
The VPN's been taking precedence, so the code freeze hasn't happened yet.
Is that, Amit, is that your understanding as well about code freeze?
So from a code freeze perspective, I think what we spoke about in the last call was that we called for all changes maximum by last Friday, right? So we are past that date, and as in what we said was that whoever wanted whatever to go into the release should try to push it in, and we should try to get the patches merged by last Friday. That was 23rd. And I think we, at least Abhilash had some patches that were pending. Abhilash, are all your patches done? I know that BBSIM, there are a couple of patches in BBSIM which could not be merged because the Jenkins build is still saying unstable. And that is something that we need to look at. But Abhilash, can you just chime in if whatever needed to be pushed has already been merged?
There are a couple of more which we are still testing. They should be up by today or tomorrow max. They were supposed to happen last week, but due to some tests failing, we found a few defects. So we had to test a few things more. And yeah, they should be up.
But are these absolutely mandatory, or can they be left out of the
Yes.
release?
Yes. It should be, because the same changes we have done for the adapter, but for the core and ONU adapter we have to do. So yeah, it'll be a little bit of half cooked if we don't.
Yeah, but I think that would be a little problematic, right? Because we can't keep extending the date. So let's see how quickly that can be done. So okay, so looks like we still have. So how many patches are we talking about there, Abhilash?
One for core and one for ONU adapter.
Okay, so we still are waiting for a couple of patch sets, one for core and one for ONU adapter. And apart from that, the BBSIM, two patch sets on the BBSIM, but the BBSIM patch sets are not absolutely mandatory, right? Abhilash?
Yes, I think so. It should be fine. One is on the RX power. That should be fine. Yeah, they're not mandatory, at least for release. Yeah.
Okay. So we try to do that, right? So maximum, let's say by today or tomorrow is what you are saying, Abhilash. Let's try to get those merged. And Taman, the idea was that once all the code has got in, we at least put a tag for a beta release, right? So that by the end of the month, uh, folks who are using the project, right, for building their systems can at least be unblocked with a preliminary or a beta version of the release. So they could still continue working with the code base. And as we get our pipelines working, then we make the final release right after the hardware tests. So I would assume that Joey, what would be your plan? When do you plan to put the tag?
I can put it in pretty much anytime.
Okay, so that would mean that we just wait for Abhilash, maybe end of tomorrow. That would be the max.
Wasn't the plan to also test it with BBSIM, all the simulated tests, and once that's passed, that's
yes. We have to ensure that the pipelines with BBSIM do pass.
Okay.
So,
Very good.
Jay, on that, did you get a chance to look into the BBSIM unstable thing? I think in the last meeting you said you were working on it and you are almost through that one, right? Making some changes to the makefile.
I made some changes to separate let me see, what was it? The changes that went in were just separating, the command that was being run was a string of several shell commands, and the edits that went in separated the commands being run. So if we got failures, they would fail independently. That just improved visibility. It's not going to fix the underlying problem.
Correct. So I think you were saying that you narrowed it down to the instability stemming from, I think it was the Corbuchera, the code coverage tool that was not able to see some of the files, and I think you were
Right.
saying that you would fix the path. So was there any progress in that regard?
Well, I'm not entirely convinced that that's the problem now, because I've actually seen some jobs pass with the Kobuchira coverage reports.
Mhm.
But no, I stopped looking at that when the VPN problem came up.
Okay. Okay. I'll also try to have a look at the failures and see if we can make something out of that for the BBC patch sets.
So, does anybody have anything else they'd like to add?
What about the 2.12 release notes?
We still need a volunteer to fill those in. There's a ticket open for it too. Okay. I'll go dig up the Jira ticket for that too, and sit up here. Okay, so
So,
Mhm.
Jay, you could check on the chat. I posted the link for one of the jobs. Yeah, maybe we could. Yeah, maybe this could be one of the jobs that we could start with. This is currently red.
let's see. That's strange. This looks like a networking problem. Can't clone. Okay. Oops. Okay. Does anybody else have anything you'd like to add to either the release or the project items? And if not, I guess we can move on to the The floor is open if anybody would like to add any topics or anything new. Okay. Well, I guess if there's nothing new to add, we can give you about 30 minutes back for your day. Okay, well, thanks everybody for joining.
Hey, bye, everyone.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Yep. Bye.